Hello and welcome to another TLDR US video. A week ago, an article was published in The Atlantic alleging, among other things, the president described those who died in wars as losers and suckers. As you might expect, this story blew up, garnering further media attention, pushback from the White House, and many tweets. We've spent the last week trying to decide if we should make a video on this topic. I mean, it's difficult for us to be independent and unbiased while talking about things like this. But as the story continued to build, and as Trump's campaign continued discussing and denying it, the story became too big to ignore. So that's exactly what we're going to discuss in today's video. Not only what Trump's being accused of saying, the controversy and the pushbacks, but also what this means for 2020, and if incidents like this can hurt the president's re-election bid. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified when we post. Also, if you want to support the channel, please consider signing up to our Patreon. We've just announced a whole new bunch of perks, including early access to videos, behind the scenes posts, seeing your name and likeness in videos, as well as new live events. There's a link to the Patreon down below. So there's nowhere else we can start with this video than the article that started it all in The Atlantic. And when it comes to the article specifically, there's one element we have to tackle first: the allegations. As we'll discuss later, the White House, Trump aides, and the president himself have all pushed back on many of this article's claims, so we're not validating them right now. We're merely outlining the allegations that are being laid before the president. Firstly, the article discusses Trump's cancelled visit to the Ain Marne American Cemetery near Paris in 2018. The president was set to visit the cemetery during a trip to France, but cancelled the visit at the last minute, blaming the rain and saying the helicopter couldn't fly, something which was later denied by officials because, well, you won't be surprised to hear this, helicopters can fly in the rain. At the time, it seemed like a curious decision, but nothing totally remarkable. That was until this Atlantic article claimed that in a conversation with senior staff, Trump remarked, "Why would I go to that cemetery? It's full of losers." Later in the same trip, it said that he referred to 1,800 US Marines who lost their lives at Belleau Wood as suckers for getting killed. Secondly, the report highlights Trump's already very public issues with the late John McCain. It's no secret that the two didn't see eye to eye, with Trump calling the former prisoner of war a loser on camera, and even remarking during the 2016 campaign that he prefers people who weren't captured. Anyway, the article states that 3 sources claim that the president remarked, "We're not going to that loser's funeral," even becoming angry when flags were lowered to honour McCain, remarking, "What the f*** are we doing that for? Guy was a loser." Thirdly, the Atlantic article claims on 2 occasions since becoming president, according to 3 separate sources, Trump called President George H.W. Bush a loser for being shot down by the Japanese as a Navy pilot in World War II. Fourthly, it reports that when visiting Arlington Cemetery in 2017 with then Secretary of Homeland Security John Kelly, Trump remarked, when stood next to Kelly's son's grave, "I don't get it. What was in it for them?" The most remarkable thing is that the article comments, Kelly initially believed that Trump was making a ham-fisted reference to the selflessness of America's all-volunteer force. But later he came to realise that Trump simply doesn't understand non-transactional life choices. In fact, one of Kelly's friends and retired 4-star general told the Atlantic reporter that he just thinks that anyone who does anything when there's no direct personal gain to be had is a sucker. There's no money in serving the nation. These aren't the only examples given in the article, but they do paint a pretty damning portrait of a president who doesn't respect the people who put their lives on the line to defend his country. This image isn't helped by the fact that the president has never served in the military, receiving a medical deferment from the draft during the Vietnam War due to issues with his feet, later referring to his efforts to avoid contracting sexually transmitted diseases as his personal Vietnam. As you might expect, the president, his campaign, and his team didn't take too well to this characterization, and have spent the following days denying the claims. This is in itself important. Remember, there are only 54 days left until Election Day, and the president has spent the last week defending himself and trying to prove that he does respect the military. It's undeniable that this isn't where his campaign wanted to be as they entered the final straight. time they could and should be using to try and catch up with the former vice president. Regardless, these denials have come in all shapes and forms. From the First Lady, who tweeted that the story is not true, saying it was a very dangerous time when anonymous sources are believed above all else. And the former press secretary simply stated, those comments didn't happen. Obviously, the president wasn't quiet on the issue either.
We have 11 people. There is nobody that feels more strongly about our soldiers, our wounded warriors, our soldiers that died in war than I do. It's a hoax. Just like the fake dossier was a hoax. Just like the Russia was a hoax. It was a total hoax, no collusion. Just like so many other things, it's a hoax.
The problem with many stories like this is that they're reliant on anonymous sources. It is understandable why news organisations need to protect their sources, but it's also understandable that people have become frustrated by stories that don't have clear sources, a frustration that the First Lady echoed. The issue doesn't mean that stories like this can't be verified though. Just because sources can't be revealed publicly doesn't mean that other news agencies can't do their own digging to try and verify the story. Even if no one can announce their sources, if a variety of outlets, maybe even using different anonymous sources, come to the same conclusion, then they might be onto something. And this is exactly what happened in the aftermath of the Atlantic article, with the Washington Post, the AP, and CNN all publishing their own stories in the following hours. The problems for Trump really began when Fox News got involved though, because unfortunately for the president, even Fox seemed against him on this issue.
John, I've spoken with two senior U.S. officials who were on the trip to France who confirmed to me key details in the Atlantic article and the quotes attributed to the president. My source, a former Trump administration official, told me when the president spoke about the Vietnam War, he said it was a stupid war. Anyone who went was a sucker. The president would say about American veterans, what's in it for them? They don't make any money. The source said it was a character flaw of the president. He could not understand why someone would die for their country. Not worth it.
Following this report and a series of tweets from Griffin, the president demanded that Fox fired their national security correspondent, tweeting, Jennifer Griffin should be fired for this kind of reporting. Never even called us for a comment. Fox News is gone. Trump has continued to insist that he does respect the military, and the original report is inaccurate. But despite the insistence of the president and his team, it seems that many are becoming increasingly convinced. One of the major problems for Trump is that, well, the glove fits. Some of the claims are pretty significant, and worse than anything that Trump's publicly remarked, but they don't seem all that surprising. After all, it's hard for the Trump campaign to deny the claims surrounding John McCain's death when the president has been so dismissive of the senator and former prisoner of war on record. In addition to this, there have been some pretty noticeable figures staying silent on the issue. Trump's aides and team may have leapt to his defence, but it's always worth being sceptical of people like this, regardless of the issue, the politician, or the party. The people we should really be looking to are those who don't report to the president, and a lack of comment from these people is really surprising. The senior officials in armed forces, the Gold Star families, or the wounded service people. These are the people we should expect to hear from. The officers saying that the stories don't match up with their experiences with the president. The families and the wounded who could tell of Trump's empathy and support. The thing is that these people aren't forthcoming, which certainly suggests some validity to the story. Most notable though is the silence of John Kelly. If the Atlantic report was inaccurate, you would expect Kelly to speak out and deny Trump's remarks. I mean, the remarks were allegedly made directly to him about his late son. In fact, just the fact that the Atlantic published the story about the incident suggests that they were more than a little confident in its validity, as they wouldn't risk their story being undermined by Kelly, or even a potential lawsuit. The thing is that ultimately we don't know for sure. The anonymous sources and the reporting certainly suggest there is some validity behind the claims, but at the moment it's not entirely clear which parts we can believe. In fact, many people are already moving past the story itself and discussing the electoral impact of the incident. I mean, even I did earlier in this video by discussing the time that Trump's campaign have had to spend defending the president. Things could get worse for the president though, with Biden's campaign and super PACs supporting him, seemingly promoting the issue, with the potential for this controversy to grow yet further. In fact, Biden discussed this very issue over the weekend.
Quite frankly, if what is written in the Atlantic is true, it's disgusting. And it affirms what most of us believe to be true, that Donald Trump is not fit to be the job of president, to be the commander-in-chief. Let me be real clear. When my son was an assistant U.S. attorney and he volunteered to go to Kosovo while the war was going on as a civilian, he wasn't a sucker. When my son volunteered and joined the United States military as the Attorney General and went to Iraq for a year, won the Bronze Star and other commendations, he wasn't a sucker. The servicemen and women he served with, particularly those who did not come home, were not losers. Who the heck does he think he is?
The question is if this story could swing any voters. It's easy to believe that nothing will make a difference by this point, especially after Trump won in 2016 after the incident with the Gold Star family at the DNC. But this could still make a difference. If Biden's campaign do decide to make this an issue they focus on, if they do highlight Biden's late son, Beau, who fought in Iraq, this could become an even bigger problem for Trump. Ultimately, one issue isn't likely to swing an election, but with battleground states won and lost in 2016 by only thousands of votes, problems like this could further dent Trump's prospects. What do you think of the whole controversy? Do you believe the article's allegations, and do you think that this could be an issue for the Trump campaign come November? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we release a video. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible. And if you want to see your name listed at the end of the videos, just like John Clapshoe, Alexandru Dobre and Marco Sella, then be sure to back us on Patreon. The link to that is in the description.